to Sri Sumanaspati Reddy ji, who was actually presenting a paper in our earlier conference also on Jati Puranas from the Gond community, and he is from All India Radio. He has been a senior official in All India Radio. Then he moved to Adilabad as a official of All India Radio. He used all that opportunity to continue his work on forest dwelling communities. He is an ethnographer, writer, translator, culture critic, photographer, radio broadcaster, and documentary filmmaker. He is an ethnographer, and after serving All India Radio as producer for 30 years, he is now completing many of his unfinished projects, including books and films on the cultures of the Adivasi communities of Adilabad. During his tenure at All India Radio, he has done significant work in creating audio archives of the fast disappearing folklore, songs, and mythologies of rural and Adivasi communities of Telangana. His Telugu short story Nishabdam figured in Katha 90, an anthology of the best Telugu short stories published in the year 1990. He has edited 2 books which feature Telugu translations of important research papers of the celebrated anthropologist Christopher von Porter-Hammondorf and his student Michael Ayag on the fortunes and cultures of the Rajgons of Adilabad. Today, Sri Sumanaspati Reddy Garu is going to speak from his experience of working in the Adilabad tribal communities regarding appropriation and other aspects of their culture. Over to you, Sri Sumanaspati.
Thank you, Nagaraj Garu. Namaste to all the viewers who might still be watching this very inspiring, exhilarating, but rather long seminar. People who are interested in this aspect of Indian society must be finding that they have found some beautiful insights and their understanding has expanded. I must thank Dr. Nagaraju for setting up the tone for this seminar in a beautiful way, with his beautiful introduction, wherein he was talking about that in Indian society, forest dwellers or the forest was not an isolated, distant kind of a thing. It was a part of a continuum of different kinds of habitations or different kinds of ecologies or environments, which were part of the overall system or geography in which people lived. So, and so it is true that, yes, wherever you might be living in India, you just need to travel 50 or 100 kilometers, not more than that, and you will definitely be able to find a forest dwelling or Vanavasi community, because whether the forest still exists or not in that area. Also, if you give even a cursory kind of reading of Valmiki's Ramayana or Vyasa Mahabharata, you will see that forest dwelling communities were in touch with city dwellers and other societies on a continual basis. So the Munis had their ashrams where they taught all kinds of knowledge to people in the forest, and going into the forest, going to these ashramas, or traveling through the forest and appreciating the great bounties of nature was a very highly appreciated thing. And we will repeatedly find in Mahabharata and Ramayana how the beauties of the forests are extolled, and how the living of the forest communities is also often appreciated with great insight. Here and there we do have conflicts, and that is anyway part of life. And these conflicts are also quite faithfully represented in all our traditional Etihasas or mythologies. But drawing on those conflicts, without also appreciating how much harmony existed, how much collaboration existed, is the main reason for the kind of confusion we have today, which makes this kind of a seminar a necessity. Otherwise, it's a no-brainer. Vanavasi traditions are, of course, Hindu traditions. There's hardly any thing to argue about that. But that, in the last 150 years or so, since the British colonial period, questions could be raised about this, speaks about a very, very intelligent, very crafty, exploitative system, which got entrenched within the body politic of this country. And although the colonials have left, we still continue with those structures and the legacies which derive from that way of thinking, which includes religious conversion. Well, I would like to start by showing one graphic, which is from Michael York's translation of a mythological song, which is sung at Gond death ceremonies after the cremation is done and people return their home. Then the bard, who is a Toti or a Pradhan, sits there with his accompanist and narrates the creation myth and also how the Gonds originated. I would like Mr. Venu, Mr. Venu, please, can you show the graphic, the diagram? Hello.
Srinivas garu,
Mr. Srinivas, sorry.
Srinivas garu.
Yeah. Anyway, the graphic would appear very soon, I guess. It shows a mnemonic system. That is how the bard would remember a huge, very long, many hours of story.
Can you zoom in a little?
Yeah, I think he should.
Srinivas garu, can you zoom in?
Here are shown various aspects of nature.
Yeah, at the bottom there is this percentage. You can increase the percentage.
Is it all right now, sir?
No.
No. Actually,
if you could zoom in and then scroll down from top to bottom, that would be nice.
Okay.
Yeah, zoom into the top. Yeah.
At the bottom of the file, there is this percentage. You can go to maybe 200 or so. Yeah, now it is all right.
Yeah. So here, in the beginning, there was Niranjan or Nirankar, the Almighty, which represents and nothingness, a primordial void. And then came Prabhu Niranjan Guru, the unified master without sorrow or thought. Okay. So if you scroll down and show the various aspects, the various characters, the various aspects of nature which get personified in the narration, and the huge, very long process of how what we call as nature came into existence, how the earth came into existence, various continents came into existence, and then how various gurus, various gods came into existence before anything of human history begins, before the Gonds, about whose history this story is, to whom the story is being told, their history comes into play. Before that, we have a huge prehistory kind of a thing, which begins at the point of creation itself. So if you could scroll it down a little, this is just one layer of what is a three-dimensional way of remembering the various characters, the various forces and their relationships. Could you go down further? This is the mnemonic system by using pebbles. The memory of this is continued within the Gond community about the original creation myth. Yeah. So you could find, as you can see, we can find many elements or almost all elements represent something from the philosophic system which is called as Hindu. So you would have Parabrahma, you would have Atma, Anatma, and if you go to the top, can you go to the top, please? No, full top. Yes. So you will have in between, you have the Vishnu, Brahma, and these gods getting created. Yeah, and even go up further. Yeah, how the Jnana Shakti came into being, how Adi Shakti came into being. Yeah, further up. Yeah. So how there was darkness, and then from there a spring came, the waters came, the Panchatan Matras, the Panchatan Bhutas. So all these terms are, it looks as if we are looking at a Upanishadic text. Yeah. So that you can find this in a so-called Vanavasi or Adivasi or a tribal mythology. I think seizes the whole argument that they are not short of anything in comparison with the Hindu way of thinking or the Hindu religious way of thinking. In fact, they have a slightly different version of that. They have recreated a similar kind of thinking about existence into their own system with the same motives, with the same metaphors, with the same kinds of terminology. I would like to read the translation of a few portions from this song, which is known as Sanapata. Yeah. So here is the translation of how the universe began. At the outset, nothing was created. There was no water, no mountains, and no trees. There was nothing at all, a void. Then what was created? Brahma was born. There was darkness or Chikati. Then Mahatu or wonder was born. Then Madankar, luster, splendor were born. The 5 elements of the body, Pancha Tanmatra, were born. Then the 5 spirits, Pancha Bhutamulu, were created. Later, the globe or the Virat was created. Originally, there was Brahma. Then first came darkness. Second was wonder or Mahata. Third was luster or splendor, Madankar. Fourth was Panchatan Matras, the 5 elements of the senses of man. Then fifth, Panchatan Bhutamulu, the 5 elements were born. They are Akash, Vari, air or wind, Tarmi, fire, Jalrani, water, and Dhatri. These make up all the Virat or the globe of the universe. After all of these, the Kasi Khand, now Khand Patardeep was born, which is the underworld or the sacred continent from where the creation of the human geography began. Yeah. So this virtually reminds us the kind of creation myths we have in our various Puranas, in the Upanishads. In this Sanapata means, Sana means the ancestors, it's the song of the ancestors. Sanalari means the ancestral world. So the Gonds, the Kolams, and other tribals, Adivasis, believe that they are all surrounded by the spirits of their ancestors. So they are living amidst these spirits. In the Sanapata story, there comes a stage before the Gond gods are created. There's a marriage between Sri Shambhu and Girija Parvati. Now, although this Sri Shambhu and Girija Parvati, as told in this story, do not exactly the same as Shiva and Parvati, but you can see many aspects of them. In the common understanding of Gonds and the Kolams and other Adivasis of Adilabad, Sri Shambhu and Girija Parvati, who brought up their first ancestors, the Gond ancestors, are equated with Shiva and Parvati, although in the mythology, the description is a little different. I would like to read a few, 2 or 3 short passages which describe how the wedding of Sri Shambhu or Sri Mahadu with Girija Parvati was celebrated. Here are 2 descriptions of how Sri Shambhu looked and how Sri Girija Parvati looked at the time of their wedding. Hira Devi arrived at the marriage place. She greeted them all and sat down. All gave her blessings. Then Niranjan Guru, the first person in this universe, said, Hirabai, get on with your work. Then Hirabai made, sorry, can I pull this a little here? Yeah. Then Hirabai made Girija sit down in front of her and made the mark of the sun and the moon on her forehead, and the two marks, one on each temple on the chin and between the eyebrows, on the lobe of each nose, and she made the tattoo on the back of the hand. Then Girija's head was washed. She was dressed in the elephant-shaped sari and the shining jacket or bodies colored like a new young cock. After washing, she left the clothes in which she bathed, the jacket and the sari, for the hijra as a gift. Then all the gurus blessed Hirabai, and all the gurus said, now is the time of the gods, and the coming future will be the period of Shingar. That is your name, Singar. Unless the tattoo is done, there can be no marriage. Then follows a description of Sri Shambhu. He looked like a god. He had a forehead like a shining stone. He had jamun-colored eyes. His lips were colored like the flame of the forest tree, and his tongue was like panjur flowers. His teeth were like tendu fruits, white. His arms were sinuous and muscular. His wrists were as wide as the ramparts of a fort. His breast was as wide as a cart. His waist was like the waist of a wasp. His thighs were as hard as iron clubs. His feet were like pearl shells from the ocean. His heels were like chicken eggs. Looking like this, the groom sat on the lap of Niranjan Guru. Okay. After that, both Sri Shambhu and Girija Parvati sit on the lap of Niranjan Guru. Then Niranjan Guru said to Mahadev, up to now you have been called Sri Mahadev. From now on you will be called Sri Shambhu Mahadeva. Girija's name will be Girija Parvatal. Then asking from Kamdam Kasturi Yayal, or the cow mother, a bull called Nandi was given to Shambhu Mahadev. Then the Niranjan Guru vacated his seat and put Shambhu Mahadev on that seat. Then he gave them 9 lakhs of Tara, the elements that make up the whole world from sky to the earth. Having given them all this, Niranjan Guru said, my dear son, the whole world is yours. You are the father of the world. Parvati is the mother of the world. Now, quote, Dhaulagiri is yours to rule. Right. So if you look at this wonderful description, the kind of language that is used, I don't see how we can say that the Vanavasis lack in some kind of a sophistication, or they lack in the higher philosophical principles which our Vedas or the Upanishads represent. If you look down, if you can trace down the narratives or the thinking, the philosophy which underlies their lifestyle, their ethics, their ritual systems, the symbolisms that are embedded in their daily life and their festivals and their lifelong rituals at various occasions, we should be able to see that they're part of the same fabric which holds India together. Yeah. The earlier speaker spoke a lot about the Gotra system among the Gonds, among the tribals. Yeah. The Gonds also have a very well laid out, quite complex actually, so to say, in terms of its rules, Gotra system. So among the Gonds we have, they say, 12 phrateries or 12 main Gotras, and within then those 12 Gotras, they have different kinds of clans. And to marry within the same Gotra is of course prohibited. The rules of marriage between different gotras are also clearly laid out, and the rules of marriage within the these two gotras, but different clans. Some clans in some clans in another gotra, and sometimes it is allowed, sometimes it's not allowed. These rules are very well known to the communities, and they have been trying to follow these quite assiduously till quite recently. So in the kind of adherence and the great importance that they give to their gotras or their original ancestry, the diligence is so impressive and is so detailed that it matches the kind of importance you can find, for instance, the importance given to the gotras among the Brahmins or the Vaishyas or many communities which lay particular emphasis on this. In some communities in India, the people are not so particular in talking about their gotras or, reiterating them on a daily basis. Among the Gonds, we have a very detailed system based on numbers, which fortifies the identity of people belonging to a particular gotra. For instance, in Adilabad, among the Gonds and the Kolams, we have 4 gotras or 4 phrateries, which are which can be called as, which they describe as the 4-god gotra, the 5-god gotra, the 6-god gotra, or the 7-god gotra. They call it Saga. So, in the 4-god gotra families, the number 4 gets represented in many ways. The number of bells they have hanging on their door would be just 4. The bamboo stick, which a headman of the 4-god phratry holds, will have 4 kanukus or 4 divisions in it. Similarly, in the floral arrangement or in the which they make in front of their gods, the number 4, the patterns or the muggu or the kolami patterns which they make will have 4 sections in them. So the numbers are virtually become their identities. Yeah. So when 2 Gonds meet, they first have to decide what is the relationship between them. So if they belong to the same gotra, they would behave towards each other as if they are brothers. And if they are from 2 different gotras or phrateries, they would deal with each other as if they were in-laws. So the first point of communication when 2 Gonds or Kolams meet is to ask to which sepa you come from, and what are the traditions or rituals you follow. Do you follow them very well or not? Yeah. Okay. While talking about the creation myth and the originary myth of the Gonds, we find that from the point of creation till the Gond gods come into existence, there are a series of deities and a series of gurus also. So this guru tradition exists at the very base, or it actually precedes the coming into existence of the Gonds per se. The mythological story which describes the coming into form of the Gonds tells us that they were born to a person called Kali Kankali. And this woman gave birth to 12 crore gods or 12 threshing floor of Gonds, 36 crores of Telugu gods, and 56 crores of Marathi gods. Since the Adilabad area is surrounded by Telugu and Marathi areas, we see that they are trying to place their gods within the ecology of the surrounding communities. And all these gods, the Marathi gods, the Telugu gods, and the Gond gods are taken into the charge by, for rearing by Sri Mahadu and Parvati when they are traveling all over the world, and they find these children abandoned by their mother. So I'm not getting into the mythological story of how the Gonds became, these Gonds became the ancestors of the present Gonds, but the point at which these gods become the ancestors of the present gods, or they're divided into 12 different phrateries, there comes a figure called Pandikupar Lingu. So he divides the Gonds into 12 clans and then sets up all the norms of Gond culture. So Pandikupar Lingu is looked at as the great ancestor who set the tone, the system, the structure, and the culture of Gond community. I'm told that you can find many references to this character called Lingal or Lingu in the mythologies of many Adivasi or Vanavasi communities of central India. So every community needs to define itself and give it a different kind of identity, a different kind of culture, which gives it a unique sense of pride and a uniqueness in dealing with other communities which are surrounding them. So we find that within the tribal communities, which might be existing side by side, there is a lot of overlap in terms of mythological structures, in terms of their deities, in terms of the rituals that they follow. But there are also very significant differentiating aspects which leaves each community independent of each other, though they exist in a relationship of, what shall we say, a synergy. All right. I will now go to talk about a little about how Mahabharata, the Etihasa, has influenced the tribal communities and the great imprint it has on them. The beginnings of, although each tribal community has its own particular mythology. For instance, the Gonds have this mythology about which I described so far, but for some Adivasi or Vanavasi communities, they derive their birth and origins directly from Mahabharata, either from Bhima or from Arjuna or from Nakula or Sahadeva. For instance, in Adilabad, the Kolam community derives its origins directly from Bhima and his son Ghatotkacha. And we find that even among the Gond community, although it is not their primary mythology, the Mahabharata has been extremely popular, and the number of people who have names from Mahabharata actually exceeds the number of names we find from their own mythology. Bhima also holds a special place as the one who gave them agriculture. It must be seen that in the Adilabad context, all the tribal communities are also farming communities. It's not as if they're just primitive and hunting communities. They have hunting, of course, but agriculture is the primary mode of how they produced a large part of their food. So the coming of agriculture, and which begins with the coming of the entry of two millets, the little millet and the foxtail millet, the Sama and the Korra millet, that is ascribed to Bhima. Bhima is the one who gave them the first seeds of these two millets and taught them how to do agriculture. So that is one important thing. How and one important thing which connects this mythological structure to other communities is that we find similar stories of how agriculture came to different communities in the Telugu land, in the mainstream society, so to say, that there are various mythologies which are told by their own specific bards to different communities, which describe how they got their professions. And there are many farming communities also, and each farming community has a similar story. And in general, agriculture came into existence or began with the cultivation of millets only, the small and the foxtail millet. So that is one common pattern that you can find in terms of the physical or material culture of various communities in northern Telangana. Yeah. I want to spend a little time on the common festivals and the common cultural habits which exist, which are shared by the Vanavasi or Adivasi communities and the rural people of especially Adilabad area. Just yesterday, on the day of Amavasya, the festival of Polala, or the Etla Polala, or the Bulak Polala festival was observed with great passion and great vigor. It's a very beautiful festival, which is a Thanksgiving festival for the bulls, farm bulls. And on this day, no work is taken from the bulls, and they're decorated, and a huge procession is taken through the village, and the bulls are prayed to, and they're also offered a special kind of a prasad, and the whole family takes their blessings from their farm bulls. The festival is celebrated from Telangana to in a wide area in Maharashtra, in Madhya Pradesh, in some parts of Chhattisgarh also. And this festival is celebrated not just by the Adivasi communities, but all the villages also. You hardly find any difference in terms of the ritual structure or the pattern of doing it. Everyone does it in the same way. Similarly, the great Batama festival, which is celebrated, which is a festival of women done during the Navaratri days preceding Dasera, is also observed by most of the tribal or Adivasi communities of Adilabad. Agriculture, the work of agriculture begins every year on the day of Ugadi or the New Year in this part of the India, and it is called as Arthongu. That is, the farm bullocks and a plow are carried to the farmland of each farmer very early in the day at about 4 o'clock, and a kind of formal plowing is done for an hour or so. And this festival is celebrated in the same manner by both the Adivasi communities and the Telugu communities of this area. So, although Adivasis have their own different other festivals which are unique to them, but then various other communities also in the villages have their own different festivals. So having different festivals or different cultural observations is a general pattern of our society. And to call Adivasis as tribes, I think is a bad word to use. I think, and similarly, to call people as belonging to a particular caste is also kind of a limiting word. I would rather suggest that we should use the word community for all these people. They are different communities with their specific culture, their specific way of productive life, production technology, and they have a particular specific mythology which sanctions their way of life. And they are all related to other communities in different ways, with the different kinds of economic, social, and ritual relationships. Because of the kind of influence colonial rule has had, and the kind of differential lines which they wanted to create between different communities in the country, they also did a similar thing to create a kind of a wedge between the forest-dwelling communities and the communities which dwell outside the forest. And they have largely succeeded. Otherwise, we would not have this kind of a seminar. As a result of that, and various other developmental projects which began during the British era and which are being continued till now, which are all meant to offset the kind of exploitation that has been heaped on these communities in terms of alienating them from their land holdings, alienating them from their own cultures, alienating them from their former wealth, actually. The problem arose when, to augment the government's revenues, people were encouraged to move into forest areas, and the government and the business establishments also found it very appealing to exploit the kind of timber wealth and mineral wealth which the forests held. And so it was necessary to check and limit the kind of sway these communities have had in their own specific forest regions. And it is with these efforts that the exploitation of the Adivasi communities began, and also the process of looking them as the other. Otherwise, looking any other community as a respectable other, that they have their own specific culture, that they have their own pride, that they are also a respectable community, and we could have a kind of necessary dealing with them either on the social level or the economic level, but we leave the other community to its own resources. We don't poke into them, we don't encroach upon them, was the kind of norm which held Indian society, which has been the basis of the great decency, the great civility that we have had in our societies. But this complex structure was jettisoned, broken into, the connecting lines were all snipped, either in a very calculated way or in a random way, but quite brutally by the colonial administrative system. And we are still drawing the ill effects of that. As a result of that, to go to the colonial master and present the status of my community as an aggrieved community, and somehow ask for some special benefits, some special facilities, became the norm during the British regime. The pattern of dealing with the ruling establishment or the kingdom to which a particular tribal area or any other area may belong was very different earlier. The kind of supplication which the British administrative system called for was very different, where you had to show that you are an aggrieved party, that you are, earlier it was based on the righteous claims of a community, that they had this craft, that they produced this kind of a system, product to the society, and so their rights have to be respected, and their territories should not be disturbed. It became a very different kind of a system where one tended to ask for a certain special reservation or a special kind of a grant from the government. And because of this, now it has become a fashion for every community to show that itself as a very highly discriminated, exploited community. Though it is largely true that it has happened, but then simultaneously with that, the community also starts looking at its own origins and then starts discovers this kind of a greatness in its origins or in its past. And then they start to begin to emphasize that we are very different from the rest of the society, that we are not part of the Hindu system, or we are not part of the general village system that exists all around. We are a very different kind of a people. So in the way you emphasize the difference, a market change has come. And this works in a very divisive way today. Earlier, it was also you emphasized your uniqueness, but then you emphasized in a way as if you are part of a harmonious whole. So as a result, we find that now there are so many communities which claim their ancestry going back to the Indus Valley culture. They have a script which is somehow related to the Indus Valley culture, Indus Valley script, and that they have Dravidian origins, that they have been exploited by the Aryans. All this is based on a very feeble and very little evidence. But educated members of various Adivasi communities have been somehow they have got into this mode of claiming a very unique and different identity, which is at loggerheads with the general Indian traditions or the general Hindu system. I think this can be easily fought, and all these claims can be quite well addressed if you start looking into the originary mythologies of each of these communities, their actual practices which existed, if they have disappeared now, till quite recent times. So I think seminars of this kind can bring this attention of not only other Indians, but in these communities also, the educated people who have got alienated from their community, but then who want to somehow assert their rights, etc. So it is the educated and the politicized communities which need to be addressed. And I think if we get into these mythological and ritual basis of each community, it can be easily done. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Swanaspati.
I'm sorry, because I was running with COVID till the last 7 or 8 days. I could not prepare very well, so you might be finding that
was very helpful. That was very educating and analytical presentation from a very deep research of you. Yes, I'm so sorry to know that you have been suffering from ill health. Wish you speedy recovery, Swanaspati. Thank you very much. I am glad to know that you have recovered a lot, and a small amount of ill health is left to be recovered.